Welcome back to the Dharma Dank podcast, episode 11. And this marks a special occasion because we reached a certain threshold as a content creator, at least in social medias. On TikTok, we finally reached that 10K follower threshold, which allows you to get monetized for your videos through the creator rewards program, as well as the ability to make playlists, more importantly. Because my content has been very all over the place and, very intentionally all over the place because I didn't want to be pigeonholed into a certain persona or niche or anything like that. I have followers that are much bigger influencers. They're huge, right? And they don't follow a lot of people, but, I've spoken to them in private, and some of them, they tell me how they sort of wish they could get out of their niche a little bit, because they've gained so much success doing the same kind of videos all over and over again that it's been kind of a massive risk to try anything else. It just doesn't hit the same way, and it kind of holds them back just to be more creative, not necessarily successful, right? Because that sort of thing, are you going to be successful or are you going to be creative? It's like the give and take. But it's great. It's been almost a year. I started making TikTok content regularly around September of last year. And on September 1st, I broke that 10K threshold. And it did feel like forever, honestly. But I will say honestly as well that before I hit that 10K threshold, I was kind of close. I was getting there. I had a video that did okay. Then I made a new video about the death of the Buddha and how he died of food poisoning, actually. And that video, initially started doing kind of well. And I did something I don't normally do. I did some energy work. And so it's like a small prayer to call in abundance for that video to do well. And it could be coincidence, but it's a very powerful correlation because it was still doing well. It's still growing and growing. And it netted me like enough subscribers and views to break the threshold. And at the same time, I got a brand new job, quit the old job. Wasn't enough accountability there. So I went to another job where there was a lot of accountability. And it's a little stricter, a little more intense, but I don't mind, The person was the manager who was training me was kind of giving me a lot of like reasoning behind this and that. But what I guess he doesn't know is I agree with most of their philosophy in terms of service. And I'm just like slowly gaining the trust of the owners there to kind of, do my thing. But I work in a cafe. I'm going to work at a cafe again, like I've always mostly done. I've worked in cafes most of my life. 20 years in New York City. I helped open like 3 or 4 cafes in my time doing this work, working as like a consultant, trainer, manager. I was even given a signing bonus to help open one cafe in Tribeca, and it was so big, it was kind of like shocking. And the signing bonus was so large, I was able to finance the publication of my first comic book, buy this awesome winter jacket, and that was great. Even though the comic book went nowhere. And you can read that comic. It's available online for free. It's called Dania. It's a series that I sort of had to stop because I didn't have any more money after I did the first issue, because I paid the artist quite well and gave them bonuses all the time. I tend to do that with artists I work with. I pay them well, or, especially if you're a foreign artist, sometimes I pay you above your rate, because it's still not even close to the rate you have to pay to American artists. But now, that whole industry is being threatened, especially the artists, because AI seems to be pretty effective at generating materials. So, of course, AI has led to an existential crisis for many artists, including myself. I think about it more than I'd like to. I'm a little worried about it more than I'd like to be. I tend to think of myself as a very go with the flow, it is what it is kind of person, but the AI thing makes me stop a little bit here and there. But in terms of, animation art, I did see K-pop Demon Hunters yesterday. It's become such a massive phenomenon that I guess I was going to check it out, and I am Korean, so I have Korean heritage, so I decided, hey, I should check it out. It's such a phenomenon. Everyone's loving it, and it's the first movie. It's the highest, most viewed film ever on Netflix, and then they released it after it was already released on Netflix into theaters, and it became #1 in theaters. And of course, this is all very unprecedented, to be honest. It's historical. And I, initially when I watched that film, a lot of it, it felt pretty cringe. First 20 minutes, I was like, oh, okay. But I was kind of getting into it a little bit. Some of the songs were a little catchy. But I was still moved by how Korean it was, how they didn't, it was just so Korean, unabashedly, without any shame, and in a way that I never witnessed, especially in American media. It was even more Asian and Asianly, it was more Asian than I thought it was going to be. It was more so than Turning Red or Big Hero 6, and I was surprised. And now, I'll never have to call kimbap Korean sushi anymore, because I used to do that a lot. Now I'm a little bit embarrassed about that, but because no one knew what kimbap was. And if you don't know, kimbap is that sandwich thing that Koreans eat. It's in the movie. You might think it's sushi if you don't know about it, but kimbap is basically a lot of cooked ingredients, cooked foods wrapped up in seaweed and rice. And kimbap literally translates into seaweed rice, kimbap. I even made a cooking video teaching people how to make it and how simple it is. And you just put an assortment of ingredients in there, and because it's cooked and it's not fish, you can travel with it and carry it for a long time, eat it at picnics and stuff like that. And initially, people started to know about it more and more after Trader Joe's started selling it, but I'm guessing K-pop Demon Hunters will bring it much more into the mainstream, into the zeitgeist. And Korean culture in general, it's just, because, I remember when I was young, people didn't even know what Korea was. When I was a kid in the 90s, people would say, you Chinese or Japanese? I'm like, I'm Korean. They're like, what is that? People, kids didn't know back then, but now it's well known. However, there is an aspect of K-pop and Korean drama and Korean pop culture and media that is hiding something, honestly. Because if you don't know, Korea is an extremely sexist country, extremely misogynist. They have the largest income pay gap between men and women and of any kind of a developed nation. I know it's part of this category of nations that have a certain level of economy, but they have the largest gender pay gap. The Me Too movement is just not doing well over there. There's a lot of pushback. It's even normal to put your photo in a resume, so people will, pick you based on your looks. Korean culture is extremely shallow. They're also the most alcoholic country in the world, by far. By Russia is number 2, and they're just excessive amounts of meat with their alcohol, pork mostly, which has caused a large influx of cases of colon cancer and stomach cancer in Korea. They have a very high rate of these cancers, but the medicine is developed enough that they can treat a lot of it, so your fatality rate isn't as large as the cancer rate, but it's pretty high. And I think a lot of that has to do with the trauma of the Civil War, the Korean War, which is their civil war. And the Korean country, the country of Korea and the people of Korea have not really fully healed from that war still. A lot of trauma that is passed down from that war. And I even notice it with the elderly. If I try to give if I give any help to any elderly Korean person back, for a while, they would insist on giving me money for their help. And it was almost like a violent insistence. There was almost violently, this doesn't happen with Chinese people I've helped, right? Or Japanese elderly people I've helped. They don't insist on giving me money, but Koreans insist. And honestly, I think the root of that is the Civil War, because the people that survived were able to bribe people. Sometimes you having money was the difference between you living and that person dying. And I think potentially a lot of honest people were murdered immediately during that Civil War, because Civil War is devastating. You don't know who's on whose side. Everyone could just switch sides at any moment. And you ended up killing your cousins, your neighbors, accusing your neighbors of being a spy in order to not have the accusations put upon you, and then they're murdered, and I don't know, a lot of stuff. And you might not know this, but almost up to the 70s, it was debatable whether it was better to live in South or North Korea. Now you think, whoa, no one wants to live in North Korea. That's insane. But until the 70s, it was really debatable, because South Korea wasn't doing so well. There was a lot of very corrupt government officials, and then there would be military coups back and forth. But eventually, Korea gained enough wealth to be obviously a better place to live than North Korea. But now you got, Putin meeting with Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping to create a new world order of autocratic leaders, now that America is becoming sort of an autocratic place. And because Trump is kind of breaking down the old order, they're deciding maybe they can be a new order, and they talk about mutual respect and stuff. But of course, they're gangsters. I mean, Putin is like a gangster. He's from that whole, he's part of the KGB. Was a spy. He murders his critics. Same thing with Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping, right? People that speak against him just kind of disappear. And that's scary shit, honestly. And the people in these countries, they know what's going on. They're not that dumb. But I guess it's easier to survive a cognitive dissonance if it means, potentially risking your life if you were critically thinking about everything. So as of now, that's partly why I still love America, because technically I can sue the president. That's not, not a thing everywhere. And also, you can file for bankruptcy, because a lot of other places your debt is forever. And that, especially Korea. That's why Squid Game is even a thing, because you can't get rid of your debt. You can't just file for bankruptcy, and you'll be hounded down for the rest of your life. And that's why Squid Game is a thing. And it could not be a thing here because we have bankruptcy. It's a beautiful human right. At least, it's a beautiful American right that we have to file for bankruptcy. And I've actually recommended it for a lot of people to file for bankruptcy, because I don't know. And I don't feel bad about it either, because a lot of big corporations are getting insane subsidies and they don't really deserve it. And then we feel bad about giving ourselves a break. Seems a little twisted, Whereas like mega corporations can lose so much money and still get, incentives and subsidies. And whereas like a average American, if they start having trouble, no one will help them pretty much. You have to be, and it's crazy. The thing with social services, like if I wanted food stamps, I have to make, less than like really very poverty wages to get food stamps. And if I make a little more, I get no food stamps. But food stamps can mean the difference of like $500 a month, whether you have that or not. But of course, there's going to be a lot more austerity measures because of the current administration. I don't know. Not understanding that people making policy, a lot of them come from generational wealth. So they have no frame of reference for how difficult it really is to get out of poverty. They just think it's just a matter of willpower, whereas they never had it to begin with. So they don't know how crippling it is. And it's a strange time, because the last place I worked at, kids felt like they couldn't leave. Like they had no choice but to work there, even though they were being demeaned very openly and regularly by upper management at that job. They just thought, oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to get better or worse if I get to another job, but it pays enough. So they endure it. That's how a lot of them felt, because they were too scared to look for another job, and they didn't have enough resources to afford to take the risk of quitting and finding another job. Theoretically, I'm also not, it is a big risk for me to do the same thing. But luckily, I'm able to find other jobs because my work history is so strong. And I love the work as a barista. I'm not, wealthy or anything, but I learned so much as a barista. Because when I meet other spiritual leaders and teachers that are big, not just on TikTok, but like in real life, like actual, teachers I meet in real life, they'll, we might debate and discuss certain issues, and they like my insights, and they ask me like, oh, who's your teacher? What did you read? And I'll tell them most of my wisdom comes from working in the food service industry for 20 years, like working in cafes for 20 years, and just hyper analyzing thousands of people, knowing all the little nuances and finding patterns in the way society's functioning, the way people function, and what causes these sort of issues here and there, and helps me create like a theory of everything in terms of spirituality and philosophy and life. But it's from observing so many people, interacting with so many people. And that's also how I committed to radical non-transactionalism. It was because I worked at a cafe. So whenever I heard about someone moving, they're like, yeah, I'm moving. And, I got to try to get my friends to help. I'm like, oh, you moving? Let me help you. I'll help you. And they're like, oh, really? Yeah, I'll take a day off. I'll help you. And then they take down my number. I can tell they don't really believe me. And then when I show up, they're shocked that I showed up. And then whenever I'm helping someone move, I will work harder than everyone. And I'll start leading the move, because usually the person going through the move is in a state of shock and trauma. And so I'm able to kind of like take control and lead things and make it really smooth. And then I leave and I never see the person again. And that's like the moment sometimes, because the whole time a lot of them, because people I help, I barely know them, or they're not technically friends in any way. So they're sort of wondering like, why would I do this? Why am I able to do this? What am I here to gain? And I can sense like they're sort of waiting for that twist, like if I even want to hang out with them or anything like that. But I don't ask for that. They're just like in a different neighborhood. I'm like, all right, good luck with your life. See ya, And it freaks people out. I've seen it, like this look of shock and awe, because they've never experienced this radical non-transactionalism so hard. Probably not. Because we all believe things are transactional. At least that's what we're raised to believe. Mostly in a capitalist society, it just tends to do that. It tends to push people's psyches to think everything is transactional. And yeah, it's not everything, right? And when you commit to radical non-transactionalism, helping someone for no reason, well, with the moving thing, the person I helped, they can never tell anyone for the rest of their life that no one's got your back. They can't say that anymore, because I'm a stranger that just helped the shit out of you for no reason. And so like basically break what you thought you knew about people in society if I do that. And I think radical non-transactions, where you help a stranger for no reason, get nothing in return, is a massive, like it's like a physical manifestation of unity consciousness on the highest level, on the physical plane. And that's why we have to do it. That's why we have to love each other and care for each other. Also because I think at that last moment before you die, you will have an endogenous DMT release. And I think with that DMT release in your brain, the illusion of space-time that we need in order to eat, shit, and fuck, it breaks down. Like it exists because if you were just seeing all of space-time at once, you would be catatonic, basically. And you would die. You couldn't function that way. So we need the filter of space and time in order to function in these bodies. But in that last moment before you die, I think there's an endogenous DMT release. Space-time illusion breaks down, and every act of kindness and love that's ever happened to you starts to happen all at once. and you realize love was everything. It becomes an extremely embodied sensation. And that's why we have to be kind and loving to each other. Not because it's a nice thing to do or it's been told to us to do by some higher being, but because it is the only thing you can do in the face of death. And if you're kind to somebody, a stranger, and that stranger happens to die cold and alone for some reason, and you are nice to them, your acts of kindness will merge with the chorus of others to give them some sort of comfort in their worst moment of despair, because death is so brutal, and the only compassion there is in death is that love, that knowledge that love was everything. It was all about love. Even your very existence is, in a sense, an act of love, because it's very unlikely that we exist. It's highly remarkable. I mean, atheists will tell you that too. Any atheist physicist, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, will tell you that the likelihood of your existence is so radically infinitesimal that it's almost a profound miracle that you exist at all. That matter exists and then you exist. It's a very unlikely thing, and yet it happened, right? And of course, as I've, spoken about in the past, I had a vision of a cosmic Buddha that told me that there is an infinite multiverse. And every time you almost died, you did die on another earth. Every time you almost lost everything, you did on another earth. And there are versions of you doing better than you, worse than you. And then there's countless worlds where you don't exist. What everyone's taking for granted is that they're not supposed to be here, that this is your earth. This is what this cosmic Buddha told me in a vision. And I thought it was not I thought it was just my imagination speaking to me. I thought it was interesting. I was like, okay, this is interesting. Interesting points. And then a few months later, I found out the identity of this being, because I didn't know this was a thing, right? But apparently there's a Buddha named the Vairocana, a cosmic Buddha. It's a celestial Buddha. And it's supposed to be like the white light Buddha, where all other Buddhas are contained within it. And the first sutra that mentions this cosmic Buddha, the Vairocana, says something like, I sit upon a throne with 1,000 petals, and each petal has 100 million worlds on it, and each world has its own Sakyamuni Buddha. So each one of these 100 millions of worlds has its own Buddha reaching enlightenment, like the human Buddha that we know in our earth. And this is clearly a reference to a multiverse. But of course, currently in Buddhist scholarship, that is not how this is seen. However, if you look at it, it makes a lot of sense. I think the reason I was activated now is because 2,000 years ago, if you talk about, a multiverse, it wouldn't be really understood very well. And that's why I was sort of reactivated now in this age to reteach the ideas of the Vairocana. Because now I can say multiverse and a bunch of 8-year-olds in a room will know what I'm talking about because of Marvel films. We just reached a point in our culture that it's a much more accessible concept than it was before. And, space-time being an illusion also helps me understand the phenomenology of psychics, seeing the future and the past lives, everything. It's just piercing through the illusion of space-time. In fact, a lot of ghosts, in my opinion, are just sort of beings just, tapping through, or living people tapping through after death, before death, all that stuff. And, I believe I'm the reincarnation of a certain sage, but reincarnation is not exactly how people think it is. I think it's actually multiple individuals living the same energy signature, living almost the same lives simultaneously through the illusion of space-time. That's why I have so much in common to this person I may have been reincarnated from. I even I saw his death. It was really brutal. Death sucked. But I don't think I am that person. I think we're different people. We're just doing exactly the same thing. It's like we're one person. But we're also different. But yeah. And then since knowing this about space-time, I have come to believe that I might be like an 85-year-old man dying on a deathbed right now, and I've had this miraculous opportunity to witness my life flashing before my eyes in real time. sort of a miracle and that I've been given, because I'm actually dying on my deathbed. And since I've known this to be true, I just constantly experience nonstop synchronicities, and I have a hand in affecting the lives of world famous leaders and figures. But like, I'm just a barista in New York, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's so improbable and weird that I'm like, oh, I must be dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've helped a few people become so big that it's unreal. Like, I don't believe it. I think they hardly believe it. It's like, this is a dream, you know? And yeah, I think if you consider that you actually are already dying in your deathbed now, you'll start to see that emergence of synchronicity and connection, and seeing how this world becomes almost like a lucid dream. Because in Buddhism, they say life is a dream. This is the dream, or whatever, and you wake up from the dream of life. It becomes lucid dreaming, you know, because in lucid dreaming, you start to become almost a superhuman. And that's cool. It's fun. As long as it's like done with love and it's done for others, and, you know, it's spread out for others. Because I did start calling in abundance this year. I think my ego mind has always not been too upset about poverty, actually, because I grew up kind of poor in the beginning, so it doesn't mess me up. It doesn't I'm not down on myself for it. I don't feel bad about myself for it. And I know other people feel bad about being broke, I guess, but I think it was good, because I don't think I was ready for success, fame, and money and responsibility until now. Now that I'm 41 and I feel much more secure in who I am, I think now I'm ready for abundance and opportunities. Because I've been given opportunities in the past, many opportunities, huge opportunities, and I sort of didn't do it. I sort of chickened out. But I also think part of that was an internal knowledge that I wasn't ready for that stuff, because honestly, I think it's really important for you to fully love yourself before abundance comes. So otherwise, you're just using the abundance to feel like you should be loved. When you fully love yourself, then abundance is healthier, because it's not always healthy. And in order to rationalize why you're a billionaire, you're not giving, most of your money away and helping others. You have to start to believe that you deserve it more than others and that you're better than other people. It sort of has to start to happen. It starts to happen in most psyches of millionaires and billionaires. They have to believe they're better than other people in order to rationalize why they have so much and others have so little. And I'm going to avoid that problem. So I already created like a game plan for what to do with wealth when it comes and how to share it in ways that are sustainable. And I have no desire to have big things to show off. I have no one to prove things to. Lucky like that, or not, I don't know. Could be trauma. I just moved so much as a young kid, so I was never felt tethered to anything. And I feel no loyalty, or I'm never like conditioned upon perceptions of me. Like, I don't let what other people think of me affect how I think of myself. I never really fully let that happen. I know that happens a lot with people. I feel very ready for abundance. This new job coming, seems they're paying me more. The subscriber thing, the follower count rising. Now I'm potentially monetized, and I sold some merch for the first time. We sold a t-shirt for the first time, because we sell merch. This is one of the pieces, because future ancestral love. And the idea is that if you want ancestral love, the greatest way to ask for the prayer is to be future ancestral love now. Is to be ancestral love for 200 years into the future. Like, be it now. That's the greatest way to ask for that prayer. And other shirts like this. A bunch of shirts, all designed by Jasper, my partner, who is great at making these designs. And they're very eye-catching, and they are great conversation starters, because honestly, I'm telling you honestly, these shirts they already look kind of iconic. They look very like part of something. And when anyone asks you about the shirt, you can tell them what it means, and it often will trigger a lot of conversation, spark a lot of connection, and potentially friendships with like-minded folks that are into the idea of unique consciousness and things like that. I've tested it in real life. That's the thing about the merch. It's really effective at creating connection. So check it out, because I will not be selling you any digital programs or anything like that, but I will sell a t-shirt for the price of a t-shirt, or a book for the price of a book. I might do, endorsements and sponsorships or whatever, but that's pretty much the extent of it. I don't necessarily want to be getting large sums of money from desperate people, for material that can be found for free. Yeah, I know other people do that. I'm not against that necessarily, but it's interesting. I mean, the theories about it are interesting. I know coaches too. I know coaches that make a strong living on it. They'll tell me the math, if you want to live on $500,000 a year, that means you need 12 clients. And that means if you meet them weekly, you need to charge them this amount of money. They're breaking down the math for me on how to live abundantly as a coach. But I didn't charge money for the people I helped weekly meetings with and help them level up and stuff, because it was more of a hobby, honestly. I just got really good at it, and it happened by accident. I never did any training for it or did any program to learn how to do it. Everything is self-derived. Everything's based on empirical evidence, based on each client I work with. I learn from them, and then I just often, one person will tell me a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, oh, and I'm just like listening. I basically, my job as a counsel, and I don't call it coaching, I call it sitting counsel, is to listen to your story, and then I kind of see the themes in the narrative that you're telling yourself, but I look at the story itself and I reframe it, and I give it new themes based on what you're telling me. So I can reframe the past and show how you've been always going towards your vision, and your, everything's been fitting into its right place, and the moves you must make, and empowering people to see the visionary within themselves. And every person I encounter gives me the lesson that's going to help the next person. This happens very often. And the best counsel is when I sit with somebody and they're telling me the things they think they want, or the things they want, the things they've done, and where they're at. And then I'm like, wait, you've achieved it all. You're there. You got it, You're whole. And they're like, oh my God, I did. And it was almost like they needed someone to give them permission to accept that they are where they always wanted to be. This happened like a handful of times. It was great. And I never saw them again. I never had to talk to them again. And these were always women where I had encounters like this. And I have had counsel sessions where I realized like, oh, I can't help this person at all. And it was always men. Look, I'm not saying anything about men and women here. I'm just telling you, this is just what it is. This is like the breakdown, Is there something behind it? I don't know. Okay. It just happens to be the case for me. But yeah, it's a different worldview, I guess, because power corrupts, right? Power corrupts infinitely. So because men are generally born with more power and authority, we're more easily corrupted. It just happens. It's just an inevitability of power. And even men will agree with it. If you believe in power corrupts, absolutely, then if you're born with more power, then obviously there's going to be a bias towards corruption. And, and if you feel a little crazy, that's okay. I think Gabor Mate also talks about this. It's something I've talked about for the longest time. So we live in a crazy world. And if you're actually like totally normal and stable, you feel like a psychopath, you know what I mean? Like, cause we live in a society where, Ivy League educated people get together in a room and decide to press a button and mass murder other people. Like, that's a broken world. That is not a world of fairness and justice. Of course not, right? I don't know. It's a weird, wild thing. I mean, this genocide now going on in Palestine, it's awful. It's awful. But there was like, they've been trying super hard to brainwash people to allow this sort of thing to happen for the longest time. Even like, I don't know, it was like over 10 years ago, maybe like 12, 13 years ago, I was friends with this kind of extremely famous artist right now. I'm not going to name them, but they're very famous. Illustrator. They're so famous, like they're in videos and stuff. Anyway, we were very close because she wasn't famous when we met, and we meet each other. I think we had a little maybe crush on each other, something like that. But when the Obama administration, there was rumblings that they were going to start a war with Iran over nuclear weapons. I was letting people know, like, hey, that's this whole argument about Iran not having nukes is nuts, because Israel has nukes. Like, we know Israel has nukes, and they're not allowed to have nukes technically, right? According to like international law. They didn't sign the non-proliferation treaty, I don't think, but they already have nukes. We just act like it's not real, right? So the idea that we have to go to war with Iran to protect Israel because they might develop a nuke doesn't make any sense. It's like the whole argument doesn't make sense because Israel already has it. And because of their dominance and having a nuke, they're able to be, just dominate other countries around them because, you can fight back, but in the end, they got a nuke, right? So they get away with a lot. And I think this genocide right now is in order to justify potentially using these sort of weapons in the future for larger nations like Iran in the end, because they are just viciously murdering people indiscriminately. And yeah, this has been in the works for a long time, but people didn't know what was going on. During Occupy, people we were talking about free Palestine, but no one really understood what the cause was, because it was already land that was taken by the British, like the European powers, as an apology for the Holocaust. You know what I mean? That's like the sort of the foundation of Israel, was a part of Europeans feeling bad for murdering so many Jewish people that they took the land of Arab people to give it to the Jewish people. They're like, all right, you can go there now. We feel bad. And it's weird because, now we're more aware of this stuff, but no one really knew how bad this was and how bad this was getting. And now it's shocking. It's shocking, the atrocities. And we will be ashamed. We will be extremely embarrassed and ashamed that we let this happen. I mean, the only way we wouldn't be ashamed and embarrassed is if we take active measures to stop it. Because, even before Pearl Harbor, a lot of Americans were pro-Nazi in America. And during World War II, America was not involved because they didn't want to be involved. I ought to let them keep fighting. Even though Germany's causing all these atrocities, people were like, whatever, they're powerful. It was being ignored until Pearl Harbor. And it was just by happenstance that Japan was allied with Germany. Otherwise, we would not have gone to war. You know what I'm saying? America wouldn't have joined in. And if, Pearl Harbor didn't happen, we wouldn't have gone into the war and, vindicated ourselves for ignoring the atrocities that were occurring. Because the rumors were there. People knew, Now, though, it's more obvious. But I don't know, somehow there's a cognitive dissonance, because as long as you keep corporatists and people comfortable enough, they won't do anything about it. It's a shame. I don't know, the Islamophobia has been an issue I've been working on for a very long time, because I grew up with a lot of Muslim friends all my life, and if you're old enough, you may remember that no one gave a shit if you were Muslim before 9/11. You know, if you're old enough, before 9/11, Muslims were just like thought of like just like Indians. Okay, they were just kind of lumped together, stereotypes about them, and even like East Asians, there was like nerds, right? The Muslim kids in my school, in high school, were the nerds, right? And we would hang out, you know, and then after and then when 9/11 happened, I was 15 years old, right? When the first tower got hit, we're like, wow, what an awful accident. And the second tower, we're like, oh shit, this is not an accident. And then the Pentagon gets hit. We're like, we're getting invaded, you know? And then they brought up, these are Muslim, they believe they're Muslim terrorists. And I was in a classroom with my friend Nahian, and I look at him like, what the fuck? And everyone's already freaking out, a lot of kids in the school, because a lot of their, you know, parents, some of the parents work at the Trade Center, so they're like white kids, they're freaking the fuck out in the hallways and stuff. And I felt a sense of dread and fear. I knew Nahian did, and we're just like, yo, we gotta find our friend. So we went through the high school, we found our friend Tawfiq, Ali, you know, we got it all, like we just looked for our Muslim friends, and we just kind of banded together just in case anything went down, because things were pretty scary. And overnight, my nerdy friends were the nerds, and then suddenly they were feared, you know, which was totally wild. And because, you know, it was so profoundly strange, like I realized, like, oh shit, if the Trade Center was taking down my North Koreans, right, then America would have been obsessed with the misogyny in East Asian countries, right? Because it's there, it's just we're not obsessed with it because it's K-pop, right? But if it was them, then they'd be obsessed with it. We would have probably, you know, done a lot more stuff in Asia, but we didn't. It happened to be Muslim people. So then they went to war with Saddam Hussein, which also made no sense, the Iraq war, because Bin Laden, who orchestrated this, was like mortal enemies with Hussein. They hated each other. Hussein was a secular leader. He was not a Muslim fundamentalist whatsoever. In fact, if they, you know, they're in battle, they would go after each other, right? So us connecting Iraq to the events of 9/11 is patently absurd, because one's a secularist, the other is a religious fundamentalist. And why are they connected? Because they look the same, because they're brown. And yeah. But I wrote a TV project though in like 2006 to kind of deal with this, and it was called Not for Profit, and profit is spelled like Prophet Muhammad, okay? Prophet, you know, not for profit. And the show was about a black guy named Omar who worked as a barista, and the show takes place in like 2002, okay? It's after 9/11. And Omar was raised Sunni Muslim by his father, who left him when he was a kid. But and he doesn't know if he believes in God at all, right? But he's watching his Islamophobia happen, really, for the first time that he's ever seen, you know, experienced in his life. And he's wondering, like, oh shit, like, because he already deals with being black, so he's wondering, like, wait, can we, like, is there a way to like stop this from getting, like, growing or like taking a hold? And he talks to his friend Nahian, who's now a corporate lawyer, about the potential to create a nonprofit organization to counter Islamophobia, but he decides to make it a parody of a group that's already well known that doesn't really exist, called Jews for Jesus. And this is really a Christian organization that tries to tell Jewish people they can believe in Jesus and still be Jewish, right? And a lot of Christian and Jewish leaders are not really fans of this group. They find they're sort of like disingenuous about their argumentation and stuff like that. So anyway, Omar starts a nonprofit that's parody, and he calls it Infidels for Islam, right? And it's not about converting anyone. It's about breaking down misconceptions of Islam and promoting a secular argument against Islamophobia. You know, he hires his friend Donnell to do a street art campaign all over the city, like, you know, Infidels for Islam is coming, IFI is coming, you know. He and his corporate lawyer, they create a nonprofit, and they hold their first rally in Union Square. And, you know, Omar's like, remember before 9/11 when Muslims were just taxi drivers and convenience store workers and you didn't give a fuck? Remember before 9/11 when it's just like, you know, this argument about like why this makes no sense. And immediately when he does his first rally, he doesn't know what he's doing. Sort of an experiment, sort of like a, you know, kind of a wild stunt, but it immediately takes on the attention of the media, and you see how the left and the right disseminate what happens, and he's suddenly thrust into a position of leadership he doesn't know if he's ever wanted, because a lot of his life has been about unfulfilled potential, because he probably has undiagnosed ADHD, right? And he hires this woman, Aisha, to be the creative director, but she's undercover CIA. And this guy, Thiago, is a documentarian from Brazil who kind of documents what's happening as it goes along. And later there's like an actual terrorist attack, and then that's when shit gets serious. And then there's an embezzlement scandal. All kinds of stuff happens, but it's a fun show. Because I just want to make a show that deals with Islamophobia, but it's not pedantic, and it doesn't feel like you're being lectured to. I wanted a show that's like cutting edge and interesting and exciting, and you don't know what's going to happen, and you can really feel for this person because he doesn't even know what the fuck he is, right? And that's a journey that I think everyone can relate to. And undiagnosed ADHD, which is what happened to me. I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 38. I didn't know. I did not know. And it's like preposterous that I didn't know until now, you know. I told this other friend of mine too. I remember after I was diagnosed, I told this friend, I'm like, yeah, I found out I have ADHD. He's like, dude, I know you have ADHD. I'm like, you know? He's like, yeah, it's obvious. I'm like, Jesus, I didn't know. And I have this very powerful memory of, so this kid in the Heian, I don't know if you're watching this, but because I know you watch my content here and there. But I remember in high school, he told me during like near graduation, he was the valedictorian or whatever, the number 2 person. And he told me in private, he said, you know, Dan, I never understood. I always thought you were the smartest person in school, but you just wouldn't get good grades. I just don't know why you just didn't try. I thought you would be the valedictorian. That's what he told me. And I was like, I was just so offended by that statement. I was like, yeah, well, you guys don't know shit. Like, I don't care about being valedictorian because all you kids, you just study all day, but you don't know shit about life. And you guys are not nice to each other. You guys don't know anything. You know, you just study these books. You think you know everything and da-da-da. I don't know. I lashed out because I didn't know what else to say, I guess. And I think I probably felt a sense of the truth of what he was saying, that I did have a much more potential than was recognized or, you know, achieved. But now I know it was most likely because I have ADHD. So there's like a grieving process about realizing that kind of thing later in the future when you look back on woulda, coulda, shoulda. There's like a whole woulda, coulda, shoulda period when you're diagnosed with that at a later age. And then you have to mourn, and that stabilizes. This is like a very common journey with people that are late diagnosed. But, you know, now that I know, it's been helpful. It's definitely been helpful. And I'm not as hard on myself when I can't function or with like menial tasks or like paperwork. Paperwork is my greatest weakness. I would almost rather have someone point a gun at my head than have to deal with like, you know, filing paperwork for a mortgage or something. And I'm telling you this as a person that had a gun pointed at its head. You know, I've been mugged at gunpoint, Lower East Side, which was awful, but, you know, I was very calm, and I was with another person too, and I kind of took control of the situation and calculated like constantly, like everything was sort of in slow motion. So basically I was on the street with a friend, and this guy across the street on 4th Street and 1st Avenue, which is not as shady as it is now, he comes up to us. He's got a little paper bag, Starbucks bag. He's like, "Hey, excuse me." And we're like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" So we walk over to help this person, and he says, "Have you ever seen a bullet before?" And I was like in my head, I thought, bullet? What's a bullet? Is that a type of hat? Is that the name of a hat? And he puts his hand in the bag and he cocks the gun. He points. He's like, "All right, money now, right?" I was like, "Oh shit. I guess this is happening, you know." And in my head, I was like, "Okay, this is happening. All right, what am I going to do?" I was like, "Okay, I know theoretically if I keep looking him in the eyes, he's going to have a much harder time shooting me if he's not a psychopath. So I'm going to pretend that I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know better. I can't stop looking him in the eyes, right?" And then I moved way slower than normal, because I also know that in terms of crime, you want crime to occur as fast as possible, because the longer it lasts, the more likely you get caught. So I slowed all my motions and reactions, and I faked it. I was acting. I was pretending I was in a state of shock, and I couldn't move quickly. But I could do everything quickly, but I was just pretending I was slow and in shock, kept looking him in the eyes, pretended I might not speak English. I was doing all these calculations, whereas my friend was like freaked out. But he was shocked that I was so calm. And now I know if I have a gun to the head, I'm gonna deal with it as smartly as I can. I mean, it's horrible, you know. I am scared, but I just know panicking is not gonna help me, and I'm able to sort of distance myself from that. And this has helped me later in my life, because I think it was like maybe 5 years ago, I had a series of panic attacks for the first time. I've had anxiety attacks, you know, since I was a child. Never had a full-blown panic attack. So I was on the subway and suddenly, like, my heart is racing. I'm getting really cold and sweating. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying, right? I'm like, oh shit, I'm getting, you know. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, I know about this, right? So I broke away from my conscious mind, or my, like, the nervous, I split my brain basically. And I split my consciousness when it was happening, because I was like, wait a minute, aren't these the signs of a panic attack, like on paper? And I was like, wait, yeah, and I'm healthy, I shouldn't be having a heart attack. So I was like, wait, oh shit, this is a panic attack. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I was like, just keep breathing. Just as long as you're breathing, you're not gonna die. Sweating, pretending everything's not going crazy. And then I was like moving. I was like, okay, dude, normal people, how do they move? They could fidget here and there. Normal people fidget here and there. I'm dying. You're dying. Go home. I was like, and I told my brain, I was like, no, fuck you. You're not having a panic. You're just having a panic attack. And if you go home right now, you will get more panic attacks. You'll be more scared of this. This will reoccur. You have to be like, no, fuck you. This is not actually me dying, right? My brain is tricking itself. I told myself this, you know. And I went to this meeting. I was going to my first like sketch comedy writing class at like UCB, right? And the panic attack's still happening, like in Midtown, right? And there's all these people, and I can't move quickly because I'm having a panic attack. But I'm like, okay, everyone's getting pissed. Oh no, I'm gonna die. I'm just gonna pass out. Why didn't I go home? But then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna fake a limp. So I fake a limp, right? Because I learned that if you fake a limp, you know, people don't look at you anymore. Like if you're walking slow in the city, people get mad and they look at you like you suck and they hate you. But if you limp, they don't look at you. They don't hate you. So I faked a limp, and then it gives me something to focus on so I can move slowly. And I got into the building. Panic attack still happening. I introduced myself to the group. Hello, I am Daniel. And I sat down in the darkness, passed out these papers. I'm supposed to read something. And I read. You know, still this panic attack is happening. And then eventually it fades out. But it lasted for like, felt like forever. It was probably an hour, you know. But then it started to fade out. And then after it faded, I was sweating, you know, trying to hide it. And it was over. And I was just like, what the fuck. And then later, I met my spouse and was at a restaurant and I'm talking about having the panic attack and it starts happening again. And I'm like, holy shit. Oh my God, I'm getting the panic attack again. Because if you get a panic attack, it's more likely to recur afterwards, like sooner than later. It's like triggered easier. Once you have one, you can get another one. So, I'm laying around, I was like, oh shit, I think it's happening again. I'm getting the panic attack again. We gotta go, and I'm like walking slowly. Spouse is sort of holding me up a little, walking out, and I'm explaining to her, like, yeah, this is not real, but I think I'm dying, but I'm not dying. I know I'm not. This is not, I'm being tricked. And it was the first time in my life that I thanked myself, like truly, honestly, was like, because I split my consciousness. So the consciousness that calmed down from the panic attack told the other consciousness that was aware of it and denied the consciousness that believed in it. I said to my other consciousness, like, thank you so much for being so grounded and able to guide me through this. And then I thanked myself for doing that. It's very surreal to thank yourself like you're another person. Truly, And luckily, I think my ability to do this has a lot to do with meditation. Because, if you meditate more and more, you start to be able to separate and witness your consciousness instead of riding it, because that's really the goal of meditation, is to no longer ride your thoughts as if they're true and real, and identifying with your thoughts as if they are who you are. It's just like, because that's what you do all day, You think these are your thoughts, right? Meditation technique, it's not supposed to shut down the thoughts, just break away from them and you just witness them. And you start seeing them separately from yourself. So you can see your consciousness separately. And you split your mind in that way. And because I practiced that, I think that helped me through, horrible situations. Especially having to do with violence and stuff like that. Because like one time in Washington Heights, I was like walking down the street and some guy ran up at me and just kicked my feet for no reason, unprovoked. And I was like, what? And I was like, what? I had headphones on and I sensed someone coming towards me. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, whatever. And they kicked my feet and I'm like, what? I turn around and I'm like, holy shit, I guess it's go time, because I did train in martial arts. I do know how to fight, but I don't like fighting. But I'm like, all right, if this stranger's kicking me, I gotta fight back. I can't just let him do that. I turn around and I'm like, okay, so long, buddy. I'm like ready to go to town on this person. But they're like, it was in Washington Heights, right? The guy, I'm looking at him and he's just like, he's crying, yelling. And I'm standing there like, and I can't do anything. I can't fight him because he's crying, So my brain splits, One part of my mind is like, you need to take this guy out. And the other part of my mind was like, hold on, wait. Right? And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? But I'm so livid. And then I'm like, okay, nothing's happening because he's just yelling and crying. He's not going at me anymore. So I'm like, okay, fine. It's like, go down the train, right? And at first, I'm really upset at myself for not taking this person out. Because like that's like street law, man. Somebody attacks you on the street for no reason. You got to do something, right? But then, I'm on the train. I'm really upset at myself at first. But I think back more deeply. I'm like, wait a minute. There was a woman there, right? I'm starting to remember, right? When I walked by, there was a woman there. And then I'm like piecing back the memory. I'm like, wait. Also, when he was crying, the woman was there on the side, not crying. Okay, so then I'm like, wait a minute. All right. So the most logical conclusion is there's a strong possibility that maybe this woman was like breaking up with this guy. He started crying. I happened to walk by as he's crying, and he sees an Asian guy walk by. Maybe I glanced over at them, but I didn't notice any of that shit. And he felt humiliated, so he decided to go attack this Asian guy. So I've been randomly attacked before Trump. This happened multiple times. So he decided to take out his frustrations on me. And he thought I wasn't going to hold my own or fight back or be like prepared. And because he was being dumped and crying, he was probably wanted to get beat up. And some part of him wanted to be like in more pain, suffer more, to keep going, you know, or to take his pain out on me or whatever. But that's not a reason to fight somebody, you know? And, you know, as I was like putting it all together on the train, I was like, oh shit. I was right not to beat him up. Great, you know? Wow. And you'll notice that sometimes. If you go back deeply in your memory, you'll notice things you didn't quite remember at first. Or you get memories that change over time. It's interesting, the nature of memory. But yeah, that's why I recommend meditation, because when you meditate more, you're able to disengage from the, you know, fast running default mode network or whatever. And you're able to sort of see the bigger truth, the wider truth, and make better decisions in the moment, because your body is often taking in way more data than your conscious mind is able to process in real time. But your body mind, like all these other parts of your brain, because they're taking in, they can sort of guide your conscious mind to act in one way or another, and maybe, you know, the correct way in your benefit. And at first you think like, wow, how did I know? Wow, great intuition, blah, blah, blah. But if you go really back in your intuitive decision making, you might realize like, oh shit, wait a minute. I knew this, I knew that, I knew this and that and that. My body was taking in way more data than I was aware of. Holy smokes. There are way more levels of perception than I'm consciously aware of. And this is true for everyone. Your decision making that's happening in real time is often going to be based on other data that's entering your mind. And you can interpret the data differently, but your body's processing this faster than you. And if you know the world is love instead of hate, you'll be guided in one way or another. Because sometimes people think, oh, my intuition knew. That was really instinct, like the survival instinct and intuition. Like I find that there's a spectrum between intuition and instinct. And instinct is based in fear and scarcity. Intuition is based in love and abundance. But both are almost clairvoyant abilities to react in real time with more knowledge than you're aware of consciously. But they're going to be engaged based on scarcity or abundance. So the more you meditate, the more you can become aware of this and even reprogram that deeper unconscious mind to see the world differently. You can start reprogramming it. But the key to reprogramming it is to do it in unordinary, unorthodox methods that are not necessarily logical. Because it's not logical to begin with. Your unconscious mind does not function logically. It's mostly emotional, based on a lot of stuff happening to you in the past. So to engage that part of your mind that's not really functioning logically, the unconscious mind, you might have to approach it, illogically, like through human design, tarot, meditation practices, sound baths, whatever. All these esoteric things, they are these unusual ways to circumvent the conscious mind and enter the unconscious mind, because it's just a hard thing to tap into without these different tools. But remember, you empower the tools. They don't have power over you. They are not your power. Don't give too much power to your tools. You empower them and make your own tools. Make your own mudras. Make your own systems, divinations, and ways to access your unconscious mind. I met a young woman who figured out internal family system on her own intuitively. She never heard of it. She was just already doing it and in fact, the origins of internal family system is rooted in like Buddhist spirituality anyway. The guy that invented it, I think he just came upon it himself in the 80s. He started to realize it. But it's the realization that there's multiple minds inside your mind, that take over at different times. I think is the same as the demons that Jesus, when people were possessed by people and Jesus exorcised demons, those are the same demons referred to in the Bible. Is the persona of rage inside of you, the persona of despair inside of you, and to exercise them, it's best to acknowledge them with grace and acknowledge them with joy. And like the rage part of you, recognize it, thank it for being there because it thought you weren't strong enough to handle shit, and that's why it exists, to protect you, and apologize to it for having to take on that responsibility. And then that part of you will relax. You know, it's not like you kill them, you understand it for the first time, and it's not ready to just jump in there all the time. It starts to just like chill out, and you let that rage persona of you know, hey, look, I'm sorry, you know, thank you, but I want you to trust me now because I think I got this now. And they're like, I, you good? I'm like, yeah, I think I'm good. You know, and then when shit gets really rough, you can call it upon it, you know, like say, because you do actually have to fight for your life or something. Then you can bring out that rage persona and be like, all right, I need your help, buddy, you know, and then it comes in, deals with shit. Like the fuel of anger, it's a powerful fuel, but it gives you the illusion that you're 100% right, which is not true, not real. That's like the illusion of despair, is that you're alone, you're 100% alone. But you know, when you're in despair, there's billions of people, probably millions of people in a similar despair as you simultaneously right now. So you're not alone, right? It's not true, but the illusion is very strong. When you have rage, you think you're 100% right, but it can't be true, right? Nothing's 100% anything. So these are powerful tools, but sometimes you need them, right? But often they come out when you don't need them. And that's why this approach to exercising those demons within yourself can be an extremely effective way to kind of heal. A lot of that stuff comes from trauma anyway. Yeah, I guess this is the trauma episode where I talk about a lot of trauma and stuff. You know, this podcast has gone long enough, and I hope I think I'm going to end it around here. But thank you all for listening, watching. Check me out on TikTok at Dharma Dank Show, YouTube at Dharma Dank, and the Dharma Dank podcast is on all your platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I mean, of course, you know this if you're listening to this right now on a platform. But and I also sell merch, which I find can be an incredible tool to find connection. It can be, okay? Check it out at the Vegan Cow Etsy shop. I think they're fun. It's a good way to support the channel. Yeah. And let me know about any topics you want me to talk about. You know, give me some things to talk about. I can talk for a long time. Like, 'cause I'm going to edit the shit out of this probably, because this went way over normal. And I'm planning to have guests on later throughout the year, here and there. I don't know, just playing around with this podcast, doing different things here and there. But yeah, this is good. This is a decent one. It's revealed a lot about my past and stuff. So you get a better sense of where I'm coming from, and a little bit about my shadow, which might explain why I seem so uplifting to people. It's because of my shadow. It's not because I'm just happy-go-lucky. It's because I found light within that darkness. So I hope this resonates. And remember, y'all, all is love. Love is all. Take care, everyone. Till next week.